Hi, everybody. Rick DiClemente. Welcome aboard. We got quite a crowd growing for our guest tonight. We'll be talking with a guest here, Victoria. I want to bring you up to speed on something first. Good to see you, Rick. Good to see this nice little crowd. We'll go to about 9:30. My website is Star Self. The name of this show is Astrology Unplugged. Now, I want to do something first. It won't take but a minute. Last week, we did a nice, healthy discussion of, you missed it, I'm sorry, Elke, about medical astrology. What planets and what signs rule what parts of the body. Next week, I've already got it pre-programmed. It'll be a 90-minute talk that I did in Australia on harmonics. But what I wanted to do is I forgot something last week, and it's so interesting. I want you to hear this. First question, though, you can raise your hand. Did anybody have any surprises this week when you learned about the medical parts of the body and you learned about where your transits were throughout your life? Anybody have any, hi, Jasmine. Anybody have any surprises there? Okay, that's what I figured. Okay, I want to talk to you about your eyes. This is really an amazing thing, and I want you to watch it. This is the only thing in astrology I know of, the only thing I know of medically that's different for men and women. When a man is transited and the sun is being hit in the man's chart, the male is likely to have trouble with the right eye. When the male's chart is moon is being hit, it will be his left eye. And it's the opposite for women. It's really intriguing to watch. Sometimes I'll have a friend tell me, oh, I hurt my eye. And I'll say, well, don't tell me. And I'll go look at the chart and I'll see which eye it is. And it's always true. It really runs true. Men are right eye. Men are moon left eye. Women are right eyes the moon and vice versa. Okay, so enough of that. We're welcoming Victoria Hanchin. I've known her for a long time, Pittsburgher. She and I have many, many friends. We've not always been in the same exact crowd, but we've kind of hovered near each other. Vicki is a 40-year retired psychotherapist. If you're typing messages to me, I won't be able to take time and read them. I'm sorry. We'll be welcoming you later on, those of you coming across from YouTube. Welcome aboard, Vic.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good to be here. I think Nachi was saying she's not getting audio or video. So you might want to try logging back in, Nachi.
Yeah, I don't have the time, but you're right. Log out and log back in and you'll get your best guess. Okay. Anyhow, welcome aboard. It's nice to have you. I know I've been very interested lately in people doing shamanistic types of work, but just like this whole new age thing that's going on, there are so many new tributaries, so many people going off on different tangents. Vicki has written a book a few years back called The Seer and the Sayer, Revelations of a New Earth. And she also has contributed a chapter to another man's book that she could tell you about having to do with the new earth. So Vicki, when you're talking about this new earth, I would assume there's a direct correlation to what got generated in 2012.
Oh, yeah. Yes, there is. There's just the trajectory of my life changed intensely twice. One is when the article I wrote about Pittsburgh's role in the Mayan calendar and the 2012 shift of the ages sort of went viral online. I didn't know it at the time, but it ended up bringing the Mayan elders to Pittsburgh, which many of you know about, to confirm that our rivers are connected with the 2012 prophecy. So that changed the trajectory of my life. And then it got changed again when I ended up becoming a mouthpiece for Mother Earth, which I'll tell you the story of that a little bit later.
Well, I would like a brief comment from you. You know, world famous Pittsburgh is about the three rivers, about the Allegheny coming together with the Monongahela forming the Ohio. Well, Vicky's been involved with the fourth river. It's a spiritual river, and I don't know much about it. Can you give us a little explanation about that's what I think you're talking about?
Yes, when the Mayan elders came, actually there was a prophecy from the ancient Mayan wisdom keeper, Don Alejandro Auslage Perez, the Mayan elder that came here with grandmother Flor de Mayo. And he actually was saying that our three rivers were a symbol put into our geography to remind us of the promised time of the return to oneness that the Mayan calendar prophecies taught about. And when Flor de Mayo came with him, she was translating a lot of his materials. He actually brought something in called the Statement of Revelations and Prophecies regarding our rivers here in Pittsburgh. And Flor de Mayo said that the fourth underground river, as she experienced it, when that river shoots up, where you see it at the point, she said it's like an umbilicus or an
Oh,
umbilical.
is that what causes the fountain?
It was originally what fed the fountain, was
Is that right?
the fourth river, which is an aquifer underneath. It's an underground river, and it converges with the rivers here too. So grandmother Flor de Mayo said, when you see that river going up to the heavens, it's like the umbilical cord to the heavens. So it's
Wow, yeah.
connecting us to source through the heart. So yeah, so our rivers are very very acknowledged by the indigenous, many indigenous, not just the Mayan elders.
So now that we are, and I kind of poo-poo 2012 when it happened. As it happened, I learned my lesson. I learned how valid it really was. So I got on board rather quickly. 11 years later now, when we look back at 2012, what do we see that as a turning point in?
Well, that whole Mayan calendar system was tracking 26,000 years of
Which is one cycle of
evolutionary
the whole
process.
zodiac.
That's the cycle that ended in 2012 and reset. So it was understood that the first 26,000 years, while all the evolution was happening, there was sort of this process also happening of spiritual awareness that was very rich in the more ancient days, getting more diluted and getting more hidden and getting more derailed. And so that we kind of went into away from our unity minds of the oneness consciousness of the right brain, and we kind of overdeveloped the left brain during this later stages of our development, so that we went into separation consciousness increasingly to find out about the consequences of separation. So when we reset, the Mayan calendar was reset at the 2012 reset point. This next 26,000 years is an exploration of returning home from the separation consciousness back into an exploration and a deeper exploration of the oneness consciousness. So it's a return home to oneness.
There must be some correlation. The fact that you take 26,000 years and divide it by 12, and you get the 12 ages of astrology. And there must be some correlation, I don't know, between it being reset now as we are now. Really, we're right at the beginning of the age of Aquarius, somewhere around there. It's almost exact right now. Do you know how that goes?
Well, one of the things that I know is that the mathematics of the long counts and the ages were very correlated with the astrological ages. I don't know how the Mayans did that, except for shamanism, this consciousness.
Yeah, well, they knew what they were doing, there's no doubt.
And they were star watchers and they were calculators, but they were shamanic peoples and priests and of ancient, this knowing system and tracking it. And so it's very correlated with the astrological ages. Mm-hmm. And this whole return now is we're in this period since 2012 that I call the it's the evolutionary impact zone, so to speak. It's like we're in the turbulence of changing evolutionary
It
direction.
makes sense, yeah.
And so it's kind of the window where we have to choose our destiny. Are we going to choose a higher consciousness, this return to oneness, or are we going to continue trying to perpetuate the old paradigm of the old story of separation consciousnesses, which is why I'm saying for our talk tonight, visionaries have said we need a new story to live from. And
Well, you're talking exactly what astrology says. Exactly, precisely. We cannot continue on as we were. And it's definitely, we use a little bit different words, but it's definitely the oneness that Aquarius is, let's all work together. Okay. The next age will be the age we just came out of, which was Pisces, is the age of oneness. So we're coming out of that age of the bottom line. The bottom line's got to go away now. We got to start thinking about all of us. That's purely astrological, and it sounds like it's totally in sync with what you're doing. Now, has your role changed since 2012 till now?
Well, what began happening, so after I became sort of an unexpected mouthpiece for the Mayan calendar teachings on the indigenous. I have worked with indigenous elders and teachers since 1992, beginning with grandmother Twyla Nitch and studying with the Seneca. So I owe a great gratitude to the indigenous for the trajectory of my life. And then, so after a while, so in about 2010, I was quite disturbed by the trajectory that the devolving world was taking back then. And I ended up in anguish doing a spontaneous ceremony, offering myself as a mouthpiece in service to Mother Earth and to creation. And in that ceremony that I did at a sacred tree, it was like suddenly, it was like changing the TV screen or changing the radio signals or something, because a peregrine falcon showed up during my ceremony, interacting with me, calling to me and sort of nodding to me and relating with me as if being an emissary of Mother Earth and saying, your offer has been accepted, and flew off calling and calling. And
that's incredible. That's
yeah,
incredible.
and at that point, everything started changing. The synchronicities, and I was called to the Serpent Mound. We're actually directed to go there through Grandmother Florida Mayo, and boom, it was like that's where all kinds of things began happening that led to this place I live from now, where I now am sort of an unexpected mouthpiece for Mother Earth.
Well, I tell you, I've been involved in this since '69 in some way. I cannot tell people how different it is right now. Just the last couple years, it has changed so much. People have been wanting to be wannabes, wanting to train, it started with massage people 20 years ago. Then it got into energy people doing all this energy work and all the Reiki work. Now it's just like, I have so many readings of people who come to me and they want me to validate it in their chart. Usually it's there, it's clear, we're talking the same language. And these people are either launching or they just need a little push and they're launched, and they don't need to look back, and they don't need a lot of people agreeing with them. These people are ready to go. It's just happening everywhere. It just is. It's an incredible thing to see. So you guys were right all along. You guys were right all along.
I'm really glad you're seeing
No
that.
doubt about it.
I think the most of the world that doesn't have the privilege of seeing a lot of
Right.
the unreported stuff
Right.
must get very discouraged, by the
Yeah.
daily news and all that. But what you're talking about is a lot of stuff that's sort of under the radar still.
That's right. As a matter of fact, up until 2 years ago, like the last 2-3 years, I got so, I don't want to say depressed, But I was writing for all these magazines, and it was the same story over and over. Pluto and destruction, Pluto and destruction, Pluto and the pillars coming down, Pluto and the institutions coming down. And it got to be so old, and I just told them I couldn't write. I couldn't write because it was all the same. And now out of nowhere came Eris, this new planet, and it's just monumental. And we are in the Eris age now. Only astrologers are just now finding out, because she's kick-ass, this planet, and she is the planet of, I don't care what it takes, we're going to get things fixed. So now I get a new breath of fresh air. I want to return to writing about what the new planets are doing. There's more optimism in the air.
Good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good. I think optimism is sorely needed.
Yes. Sorely needed. Yes. Yeah. Well, there's a lot of, if you weren't ready for it, we warned everybody from 05 on. But if you weren't ready for Pluto just did the left-right punch, boom, 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 boom. And after 07 and the crash, and then Pluto started to just cause loss of faith in this institution, that institution, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know what words to use with your particular interest, but I want to hear more about this sense of oneness. Does this have to do with us starting to give up our country definitions, coming together as a global people?
I don't know how it'll play out exactly. What I'm really attuned to is that oneness is more of a frequency of really recognizing the truth of our interconnection,
Right.
that we're not separate, and that there's even quantum physics says the number of minds in the universe is one.
Right.
And that consciousness preceded matter. Consciousness preceded matter. Quantum physics is saying this now. And so if there's one mind, then we're all expressions of that one mind. Are we all the same? No. There's incredible diversity. And I think the richness of the cultures, I hope they never disappear. I love that. I love that there are all these multiple ways of expressing
diversity,
sacredness, I'm going to call it, our reverence for life,
right,
for all that is sacred, and so many ways of celebrating that, and traditions of song, dance, ceremony, and knowing that, so many languages. I hope that that diversity gets more treasured.
Well, what I'm talking about is I'm hoping that the divisive parts of it goes away, and that the unity part does come together while keeping the diversity, certainly.
Yeah, I think that that process is going to be, well, I think in a lot of ways, these New Earth songs that came through that are part of the seer and the sayer give some clues to how that will happen. And
what was that now, songs?
Yeah, so there were in the seer and the sayer, what began unfolding for me as a mouthpiece when I offered myself.
What is a seer and a sayer?
Well, I call the seer is the ability to see the oneness, see the sacredness, and the sayer is the ability to speak into that and be a mouthpiece for that in a way.
Okay.
And so the revelations of the New Earth in the title of my book really refer to the consciousness of this oneness that began transmitting through to me, often through songs. And that was really surprising for me, because I am not a singer. I am not a songwriter. I am not even a musician, but there were actual songs that transmitted. And it took me quite a while, actually, until after I had already published the book, to really comprehend that these are teaching songs from the consciousness of Gaia and the oneness that runs through nature and creation, and that Gaia is a living conscious being. And these songs of Gaia, of the new earth, are trying to show us a future that Gaia has been dreaming, not just for us, but really through us, I think.
So Gaia, like the Indians have always told us, is a living, breathing, educated, intelligent entity that's, if we only listen, right?
Right. Right. And, this doesn't have to sound like such a radical
That's right.
idea,
That's right.
because quantum physics is talking about this consciousness is entangled, it's in everything, and the indigenous call it the web of life, and acknowledge all our relations. And when I was studying with grandmother Twyla Nix of the Seneca, she taught that the animals, she called them creature teachers, and that each animal has a medicine teaching for how to live in harmony with the earth. And so they're actually teaching us what we've sort of forgotten, of how to live together in harmony with the earth. And each animal has a medicine teaching for us. And she also taught about the language of stones. So the stones actually were also acknowledged as conscious beings that have reached us. And I've had the experience in the Seer and the Sayer, a story of 3 serpent-shaped stones that came to me from 3 different locations that all interconnected together. And actually, that's one of the stories I'd like to tell later about what was revealed, and how I think that's a prophetic teaching for our future.
There's another turning point coming, I'll say quickly. I'll have a guest on March 9th, friend of mine, Larissa Berkman. You may remember a year ago, I had her interview me about how my career unfolded. Well, it's the same woman, and she's a tantric specialist out of Southern California, of course. And we're going to do something I think is really important, and I'm really looking forward to it. We're going to have a show about the myths, try to say that, about the myths of the New Age movement. And what I'm talking about there is we're going to be trying to clear up these myths of you have to act like this, you have to act like this, you have to say these right words, you have to meditate this much. And Ram Dass called it spiritual materialism. So we're going to try to clear it up in the effort to say to everybody, look, this whole thing's a lot easier than we think. Okay, we don't have to make it laborious like we've been programmed to. And so there's this, with all these things you're talking about, there's also this movement afoot with what Eris is doing, etc. People are taking the loads off of themselves. They're taking the loads off that may have been on them karmically or through their lineage. So go ahead with your story. I'm real anxious to hear about it.
Yeah, well, I think what you're pointing to is really important here, because it's almost like, and I certainly have been very guilty of this, of trying too hard.
Right, trying,
not letting the spirit flow because you're trying to get it right, And so I think that hopefully what's opening up to us is understanding, and quantum physics teaches about this, that there are frequencies of frequencies that sort of are the harmonics of the creation of the world.
Right.
And so it's, when we cultivate, it's more of a way of being that can attune and align, soften, like not try so hard to get it right, but actually soften and tune in, and open to, I call it listening to what wants to happen, what life wants to have happen.
It's a real good way of putting it.
Wants to have happen.
Getting the strain out, taking the strain out of it. Am I doing this right? Am I sitting in the right posture? Did I go to church enough days? Did I do all these things? And we think all this stuff is so important. We're finding out it's not. We're finding out just what you're saying. Internally, this stuff just keeps growing. Much like your 4th river you're talking about. I've been talking a lot about astrology, is these rivers coming through us. These new, one planet goes by, another one goes by, and these sources of archetypal intelligence are coming up through us, and we're all getting better at noticing them, getting on board with them, expressing them.
Yes, and actually, the 4th river ultimately represents the heart. And grandmother Florida Mayo saw this and acknowledged it when the Chinese teacher Huang Shang wrote poetry. He wrote Chinese. He was one of the City of Asylum exile writers in residence. He wrote poems about the Fourth River, and I got to interview him. And when I asked him to talk about the Fourth River, he came alive. He loved talking about the Fourth River, and he wrote about it as if it was emerging from the heart. And I asked him, how did you know there was a fourth river? He said, I didn't know there was actually a fourth river. I just felt it through in my heart. And this was a Chinese writer. And, I had to speak to him through a translator.
Right.
And this is what he was telling me about our rivers.
So is this a dumb question? But what's the source of the fourth river?
From what I understand, there is a source that originates in New York that flows down through
Wow.
some channels to this fourth river. That's according to the Mohawk grandmother Donna, that was one of my co-adventurers in the Seer and the Sayer.
So similar to the Allegheny coming that direction.
Yeah, so I don't know how to verify that, but that's the understanding I have through her.
Well, I would like to stop for 1 second and do what you were thinking. I don't think I'm crazy. I know I am in some ways. How many people are feeling in this new age? Something's new, it's here. See? Raise your hand if you're feeling a new optimism or a new corner that we're turning. And the old is just, there's no taste for the old anymore.
Okay.
It's being spit out quickly. So there's your first survey. That's pretty good.
Yeah. And
I don't think we would get that answer 3 weeks ago.
Yeah. And I appreciate you asking that, because, there's so much drain on us when we watch the daily news. And what that tends to do is take us into our lower brain, which is the fight, flight, really, protective survival brain. And when we drop down that way, we don't get so easily to access the higher brain states, which are compassion is a higher brain state. Loving kindness is a higher brain state. Empathy these are higher brain states that you cannot access from the survival brain. Altruism, creativity even, these are higher brain states you cannot access from a stressed survival lower brain place. And so we see that in our culture, and we see the amount of people that are on edge and the violence and that sort of thing. So another argument for really making it known in the greater population that we're living from the wrong story. We have a story of separation. What does it mean to shift out of that story and into a new story that is oneness? And oneness isn't woo-woo. Oneness is what
it's not woo, right?
Science is teaching this.
Right.
And yet it's also a frequency that when we tune into it, it supports a way of being that opens up awe. And in the Indigenous studies that I've done with Don Oscar Mira Casada, which is who my book chapter is with, in his book Shamanism, it's called Shamanism, Personal Quests for Communion with Nature and Creation. And in that story, he teaches about the core principle of Aini, which is called sacred reciprocity. So in the Indigenous world, it's like you're not just a taker, you're always giving back. And you understand that it's a way of being. And it's not just for our relationships with one another, but it's also our relationships with Mother Earth, that we have to be caretakers with Mother Earth. So when we walk on the earth, we can open to her and feel her. And so maybe this would be a good time for me to sing one of my songs to you. which is from the New Earth. And let's
Please do.
have a taste of some of these spontaneous song transmissions that came through that I understand now are songs that are teaching about the consciousness of this new earth. So is that okay with everybody?
We're all ears.
Okay. All right. And before I do that, I really want to start by acknowledging in gratitude, because that's another important thing about changing the channel is staying in gratitude. And so I want to start in gratitude to really acknowledge the ancestors of this land, of Pittsburgh. And Pittsburgh, the ancestors that were here before us were the ancient Adena, who actually were some of the ones who created the Serpent Mound, which is part of my adventure, occurs there. I have many connections with the Serpent Mound. The Lenni Lenape, who also were very connected with the construction of the Serpent Mound, according to knowledge we have about it. Pittsburgh also was home to the original home of the Shawnee,
right?
The Monongahela, and the Six Nation Iroquois, or as the original name is the Haudenosaunee, which includes the Seneca that I was able to study with. And I want to begin by honoring our ancestors of the land and the spirit of the land, and also acknowledging the power and guardians of the directions of the north and the south, the east, the west, the above, the below, and the within is the seventh direction, is within. So I also want to honor and acknowledge my connections with source. I'm not just an earthly being, I'm a celestial being as well. And I love, Rick, how you called your work star self. So I want to have us all invite in our star selves, our cosmically connected selves along with our earthly connected selves. And to acknowledge that so many of my teachers, it's been 30 years of my working with Indigenous teachers, beginning with grandmother Twyla Nitch of the Seneca and grandmother Spider, who taught me many of her teachings, and the 13 Indigenous grandmothers, grandmother Flor de Mayo, and more recently, Don Oscar Mira Quesada, who's of a Peruvian shamanic lineage. And these earth honoring and star honoring cultures are so fundamental to what my life trajectory has come aligned with. And I want to also mention, probably many of you know, but if you don't, I think it's really important for people to know that many of the indigenous cultures are now coming out much more publicly about their own origins as being acknowledged as from the stars. And for instance, the Maya and Flor de Mayo openly acknowledges the connection with the Pleiades. And so there are many of these star connections, and their prophets are from the stars. So these are star families that they're acknowledging. So I want to just throw that in the pot. That doesn't have to sound really woo-woo and ET, because this is ancient origins. This is what
it's time for it.
Yeah.
It's time for it. In astrology, we discovered one planet in the 1700s that was symbolic of the mind getting, the collective mind getting a little bigger. One planet in the 1800s, two planets in the 1900s, 80 new planets in the first 5-6 years of this century. This is symbolic that the mind is, the collective mind, all of us, is now ready to, be introduced to these energies, entertain these energies, to integrate these energies. And astrologically, it's almost, I've looked at this really with a level head since the last 40, 50 years. I've never seen anything like what's going on in the last 10 years, astrologically. We're being bombarded by tremendous new energies, and an old psyche couldn't have handled this. Could not have handled it. It's just too much. And all those little things that happened to us in the 60s, in the 70s, in the 80s, here and there, and drugs and so on, and culture, all those things had to happen to loosen us all up. It's really exciting to watch, let alone, I have to say it, let alone the predominance of people seeing UFOs. It's like tripled. I haven't seen one, but I'm not going to doubt them. We're in a new age. There's no doubt about it. Your response? What's your response to this huge shift that's going on astrologically? Doesn't surprise you, does it?
I think we're right on track.
Yeah. Yeah, what I like is they're two different tracks, but when we look over, they're really parallel and they're really saying the same thing, so we keep on going. That's a really promising sign, because there's so much room for woo-woo. And you go in the web and it's woo-wooville. My God, there's so much woo-woo out there. But the woo-woo has a way of taking care of itself. I'm finding that out on the web. When you're nothing but woo-woo, you're not going to last long. You're not going to last long, because there's so much real stuff out there, good, tangible stuff that I'm seeing. The articles I'm reading are just higher quality. There's more people doing psychic work, mediumship work, higher quality work. It's very encouraging.
Well, you had mentioned that, my work was shamanic or whatever. And there are elements of it that are very shamanic. I don't call myself a shaman, but I think the shamanic consciousness is making a real comeback now, because shamanic consciousness is basically a consciousness of oneness with a technology of oneness, that really has teachings of that in it. And so it's about ultimately the experience. The book, Don Oscar's book is well named, The Experience of Communion. So I think of this word, I invite you all to think of this word communion. Communion means, means oneness or unity, and, or with. So it's communion, union with. And so we're being invited more now into technologies, if you will, spiritual technologies. But again, it's not about trying too hard. It's about consciousness of communion with the community of all life. So take that in for a minute. You're being invited into communion. And that's where I'd like to invite you all into right in this minute. I'd like to invite you into your hearts, just to enter your heart, and knowing that as you enter your heart, it's a portal into the cosmic heart, into the heart of the earth. And this communion is this consciousness of oneness that connects us with one another and with the earth, and with this stream of consciousness that's intelligent, that informs us, and which is what I was tuning into, I think, when these songs came in. So the first song that I'm going to sing to you is the first song that arrived. It's called Come Weave a Web with Me, and it is an invitation into the new earth. And I'm going to sing it to you, and then I'm going to ask you to just pause a bit and notice what's showing up for you. And we'll check in with each other afterwards. So here's the song. Come weave a web with me, a rainbow web of harmony. Come weave a web with me. Come weave a web with me. Beauty for all to see. Come weave a web with me. Weaving, weaving, weaving a new earth dream. Weaving, weaving, weaving a new earth dream. Come weave a web with me. Fulfillment, joy, and ecstasy. Come weave a web with me. Come weave a web with me. All life expressing unity. Come weave a web with me. Weaving, weaving, weaving a new earth dream. Weaving, weaving, weaving a new earth dream. Come weave a web with me. Come weave a web with me. So I invite you to allow just a single word to arise that might capture what that invitation, what that song touched in you. And if you're willing to just type it into the chat.
I'm going to read what the chat says to you YouTubers who cannot see the chat box. Deepness Beautiful. The song captures so much hope, unity, together. The word I was getting was finally. Hope, creative power, shot through, collaboration, together, kindness, depth of conviction, God, harmony, loving. What beautiful word. Perfect, just perfect.
Ooh. Oh, thank you.
I'm so glad because I've been telling the group we've been on 6 years and I've been telling them the last year or so, I don't know what it is, but it's not that I'm getting tired of doing astrology. I've just been feeling that we're going to be doing more spiritual work instead of just pure astrology. There's a place for both. And I've been hoping to lean more towards love because everywhere I look, that's the answer to everything. And it's not always the answer that's on the table. This is very, it's not only exciting, but it's validating what I've been thinking. We're being directed. We're being directed by something bigger than us.
Thank heavens.
Thank heaven is right. Thank God is right. Now, I don't know why these stories always have to be, you got to get to the end, get to the edge of the flat earth before it happens. But we're sure seemingly at the edge.
Well, what I want to notice about this song is that the thing is we're being invited into collaboration, right?
That's Aquarius.
And
That's Aquarius.
Interestingly, the collaboration here, actually, this song came through the nature spirits, or otherwise known as the fairies. And Grandmother Donna and I actually had an encounter with the fairies at the Serpent Mound. We saw them, we engaged with them. They and then this song followed. And to me, this is remarkable because to think that there is this unseen realm that still cares and is connected and is working with us. And now, actually, this was an incredible, vulnerable, if you will, I think, invitation to collaborate. We don't believe in fairies anymore, right? And these are beings that are very unfamiliar to most people, and the stuff of fairy tales and myths and so forth. But we're being invited to the unseen realms for collaboration to create come a web with me, to create a web of life that includes the unseen. And it's a rainbow web of harmony. So that means inclusion of all sorts of differences, I think. And when we enter this collaboration, it's about leaving this old story of separation consciousness, because everything in this song is about, as your words reflected, these feelings of connection, of love, of kindness, of integration, of collaboration. Your words really painted this picture that it's not about going to be anything we can't enter the new earth from disconnection. It's really about this open-hearted connection that even includes the unseen realms.
Yes, and two things I came up with. I wasn't laughing at you. I was laughing at what I saw Elke had typed while you were talking. She said the fairies love Werther's candy, that if you set some out, they will just disappear. Then there was a question for you, Victoria. There are still Mayans in Mesoamerica. Are any of them do any of them intend to link in with this new awareness?
What makes you think they aren't?
I would think they are. And I watched a show last night on Nova, discovering that there have been huge civilizations in South America from aerial photography that we never knew were there. It's a brand new vista to discover. So all hell's breaking loose. And that's what we thought would happen when Pluto squared Eris. That would not have happened with just Pluto or with Pluto and Saturn. Not the normal planets. Had to be a new one. And the combination of Pluto squaring Saturn, which is coming to its end now, it's been together about 10 years, is starting to separate now. But those two together have been, hey, feel like butt kicking? The other one says, yeah, I feel like butt kicking. You feel like butt kicking? Yeah, okay. What do you feel like? Well, I feel like we've had enough. Well, what do you feel like? Well, I feel like but it was, what does Pluto say? We need sweeping changes. Pluto says sweeping changes. And Eris says, if I have to use chaos, I will. That's what the two voices are saying.
Mm-hmm.
So they're the major forces astrologically. And I think a lot of astrologers are looking at natal charts. How Rick, our new astrologer with us, and they're looking at
absolutely.
They're looking at it saying, I'm not sure what to do with this. I think a lot of astrologers are looking at the charts now saying, I'm really not sure how to continue reading. Some shift has to come in. But I'm very thankful to the man who directed me towards Eris about 5 years ago, because I was missing it. It's not Pluto, it's Eris. So thank you, Rick. Do you want to take questions now, or do you have another song?
I'd like to sing a song and then take questions if there's time.
Whatever you would like to do.
Now, there's a song here that I think I call it Humanity. Well, it's the second song that came through the Sacred White Buffalo. It was a transmission after a connection with the Sacred White Buffalo here in Western Pennsylvania. But it seems to be a song that describes humanity remembering our oneness. And it begins with the words, indigenous soul. And I'm intrigued by that. So here's the song. And just again, let's just drop into our hearts and take a breath together and open up to what this song gives us a glimpse into. Indigenous soul, original whole, seeing with sacred eyes, life's interconnection, speaking as blessing, divinity realized. In a sacred way, creative as play, offering our self-expressions as gifts freely given, joyously living, abundance the lesson. A new way to listen, oneness the mission, listening to creation. Animals, stones, trees, rivers, and bones, honoring all our relations, releasing the lies of shallow eyes, beholding each other's beauty, freed from the chatter, speaking what matters, heart, soul, community. No more separation, now co-creation, relating essence to essence, original blessing, joy, peace, and sharing, a new earth expressing love's presence. So if you want to just see what word arises and put it in the chat from that one.
Feel free to, everybody. Hope, joy, redness of love, authenticity, sweetness, returning home to love, one spirit, blessings, hope for connection to all things, courage, I'm gonna ask you a question. It's kind of off the wall. God gave you 2 ears, 2 eyes, and 1 mouth for a reason. Use them wisely. I'd like to ask you a question, Victoria. I'm just getting this intuitively. During the last couple hundred years, the American Indians have been treated like crap. I mean, they have really gone through some bad stuff. And really, when you think about it, they've handled it pretty well. It seems to me like they held the ground for us while we were all out being the prodigal son, while we were all out wasting our gas money. It seems that we're getting through our times and we're starting to see our time didn't work. We're coming back to a more sensible. And who's sitting there at the foreground? Who's sitting there in the middle of the teepee? But the American Indians. Does that make any sense that they've been holding ground for us?
I'd say they're doing more than holding ground. I'd say they've been the keepers of the wisdom.
Well, I think you're exactly right. But I don't have any basis to study that. Well, can you speak more about that? That's really intriguing.
Well,
Stewards, Rachel says. Stewards.
Yeah. You know, they hold the knowledge that we're trying to return home to. They live it. I can't tell you how much I have learned from that. In a way, I'd rather have Tanachi. If you're still here, Tanachi is very connected in terms of Indigenous living and knowledge and heritage. Do you want to say some words, Tanachi?
Can you hear me?
Yes, dear, go ahead.
I believe that you're very close to the mark in what you're saying. You know, we're connected with the land, and coming back to Mother Earth and coming back to one another, that is the primary teaching. They go hand in hand. They are not separated at all. And so as Native people continue to hold the Mother Earth and the land as sacred, and as people are returning to respect Mother Earth through the environment, through, you know, different acts of love and activism to protect land, water, earth, air, creatures, animals, and people, we are beginning to return back to that oneness. And that is the way that Indigenous people have always lived. It's pretty simple. It's not very complicated at all.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's one reason that we're seeing marriages last so shortly, because people are seeing that paradigm is not the exact paradigm that works. And I think the marriages are being replaced, from my perspective, with friendliness. Let's become friends before we worry about whether we're going to live together. That's what an astrological viewpoint, I think. And I think that agrees with the age of Aquarius too. Well, thank you. That was really, really good, Tanache. If anybody would like to ask Victoria a question, you can unmute yourself. Just raise your hand and I'll point you out. And please feel free to ask her whatever you would like. Or to Tanache, go ahead and raise your hand. I can't do all the work. Okay, Rick Sempe, go ahead. He's our new astrologer.
Yeah,
Rick?
that's Kempe.
Kempe, I'm sorry.
No worries. Victoria, I was wondering if you have had your chart done with asteroids to go ahead and see what the different things that have been going on. And we've had things discovered newly, as was said earlier, with planets, but also asteroids. And I noticed Caraclow's discovery was in '97, wondering if that might be a time of shifting changes and awarenesses, because it does seem to make a consciousness awaken.
What a beautiful question.
What was that name?
Caraclow.
Paracoil?
Caraclow, Chariklo. That is the wife of Chiron.
That's the what?
The wife of Chiron.
Oh, wow, fascinating.
Yeah.
And in a way, she's the protector of empathy and the stand for sacred space and for our relational attunement through what the song that I sang called Essence to Essence communication. I'm just learning about her. I'd love to know where she is in my chart because I really relate to her juju.
Your first song reminded me of her because she's considered a weaver of sorts.
How do you spell that again?
Chariklo. And
she's a recent discovery too, isn't she?
Yeah,
97.
I've heard that, but I've been pronouncing it wrong. Yeah, she's one of the group with Eris that was discovered in 05.
And she's also considered the shamanic healer. So that's why you're probably having your innards tickled.
Oh,
we found Rick at the right time.
In my chart, and if she's not in my chart, I'm telling you, I'm feeling her.
We'll find her. We'll dig her up.
Thank you for that. That's amazing.
We'll dig her up. It's hard to add new planets. Go ahead, Marcia. Go ahead, dear.
Okay, I think I'm unmuted, right?
Yes, you are.
Victoria, I really like your songs a lot. And I felt like a meditative chanting kind of connection through them. And I'm just wondering how they come to you.
You know, that's the winning question. I don't know. I'm not a singer or a songwriter. They happen in the midst of stuff happening. Sometimes, like I had made a trip to the Sacred White Buffalo and we were trying to travel to a nearby sacred site. And I was trying to help navigate the way there. And the song started coming in and it started coming in and I knew it was important, But every now and then the driver who was taking me there, Frank Valley, a collaborator in the story of the seer and the sayer, you can read about this. It's one of the most hilarious chapters in the book, I think, because he's asking me to navigate, and I am a directionally impaired person. So I have no way to know how to navigate, but I'm using a pendulum to try to navigate. And I keep having to put the song on hold. I'm like, Spirit, can you wait? And I would say to him, a song's downloading. And he's like, I'm so sorry, but I need to know where to go. And I was like, Spirit, please put the song on hold. And then I would test with the pendulum and we'd figure out where we're going next. And then the song would start, like a pause button had been pushed. And then the song would continue coming in. And the whole song finally came in that way. And it came in with a tune, and I had to sing it into my phone so I would remember the tune. And it just came in complete. Like, where did that come from? How did that happen? I don't know how to answer that, except to say that I offered myself as a mouthpiece. And I didn't know what that would mean, but this is part of what it meant, you know, for
Well,
me. I don't know if it would happen that way for other people, but I had offered myself as a mouthpiece. And there are 5 New Earth songs that came through, and actually a 6th one came through recently. So it's still happening, but the songs are, if you go to my website, Whole Person, Whole Planet, there is a link on, you can go down and it says download Victoria's New Earth songs. You can go to SoundCloud and you can hear them. And I do a little bit of an introduction, a backstory for each of the songs, so you can hear the context in which it came in. Sometimes they came in, one of them came in the shower, and I started coming in the shower. I had shampoo in my hair and I was like, Spirit, wait, I have to dry off, and so it was not predictable.
Well, they're very beautiful. And I felt a really strong connection with you singing those songs. And I imagine everyone else has as well. And they're just beautiful. And it must be like a very, aside from the connection, but also a cleansing, a cleansing
Right.
aspect to them.
I just looked and saw on Google that, I don't know the details, but you can go to Google and you can follow the directions to get Caraclo. Is that how you say it? Caraclo. You can get her to show up on normal solar fire. So we have the software. It's just a matter of just linking to that correct. They're called centaurs. This is in the body of Eris. These are they're not meteors. They're not asteroids. That's improperly termed. They're asteroids are between Mars and Jupiter. The centaurs are a group, including Eris and Caraclo, are between Saturn and Uranus. It's another belt out there. So it is available to us with solar fire.
So I just want to thank you, Marcia. Thank you for that, Rick. The Caraclo stuff I think that's going to be really an important asteroid to really discover more about right now. And I'm so glad, Rick, you brought it up. And Marcia, thank you so much for your comments. And I love your thought about cleansing. I do think that in a way, these songs carry a frequency. It's like a frequency of purity. And that would really have a sense of cleansing and restoring a sense of harmony and wholeness. So is that how you experienced it?
Yes, most definitely. Just touching it just a little bit on the surface, and maybe working with the songs more and listening to what you have available. Almost like a chant and mantra, but definitely connected with the indigenous cultures, very strong connection.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. Well, I think, if you want to use them on SoundCloud to work with them that way and hear them and meditate with them or resonate with them, harmonize with them.
I'm not familiar with SoundCloud.
Well, when you go to my website, you can just click the link that says it takes you to my songs. It'll take you right there. And then it just typically starts playing, and you can select.
Okay.
Yeah, my wholepersonwholeplanet.com site. Thank you, Rick.
Mhm.
Also, you can see a little bit more about, there's a video about living in the frequencies of the new earth that I just had my son post on there. It's a recent video I made that takes you through an actual meditation, kind of like you're describing, Marcia, to use the songs in a more meditative way. It has beautiful images that I didn't create. I had someone help me with it, beautiful visual images that go with it. So it's a more meditative experience of the songs, some of the songs. Not all.
Okay, this is your book, to clear it up for everybody.
It's the
Now,
series.
this other book you did not write, but you contributed a chapter to?
That's right. It looks
And
like
what is, yeah, there it is. What is that chapter about?
this chapter in this book is called She Will Dream Through Us. And that's the chapter that, so some of these revelations of the new earth have continued past the publication point of the seer and the sayer. And Kathy's on the phone, on the Zoom tonight. Kathy was with me when one of these phenomena happened that I wrote, what I wrote about in this story. There had been 3 stones that had come to me, each from a different location, but they all were sort of shaped with the same serpentine snout of a serpent shaped in the stones. And they wanted to be reunited in a ceremony as I was instructed. And I trusted that because I just learned to trust these things, and it wanted to happen at the Serpent Mound. So I asked Kathy to go with me to the Serpent Mound. And so there were 3 stones. One was a large stone that represented the Kundalini life force, the serpentine energy of life at the level of the heavens, the cosmos. Then there was a middle-sized stone that represented the human Kundalini life force that had that same serpentine snout shape. And then there was a small stone that actually came from the Serpent Mound, and it represented the Kundalini energies of the earth. And so when you stacked these together, snout to snout, like we did at the Serpent Mound, and did a ceremony there, spontaneous ceremony, to unify, reunify the Kundalini energies of the heavens, the earth, and the human through our consciousness of the human. That ceremony was really profound. And fast forward a bit, after the Seer and the Sayer was published, I found that the human middle stone of the Kundalini had been on a stone mound on my deck, but it had shattered. And when it shattered, it released a stone that was the size and shape of a human heart. And if you hold your hand like this in a fist, that's about the size of a human heart. Did you know that? And it's about the shape of an actual heart. The human heart isn't like a Valentine. It's more like this. It's like your fist. And so I researched and found that the weight of a human heart was whichever weight it was, I can't remember now, but I weighed my stone and the stone had the same weight. So it had the shape of a human heart and the weight of a human heart. And I was astonished. And I saved the remainder of the human, I call it the human Kundalini stone, because I knew it would be needed in ceremony later. And so Kathy, I invited to go with me to that ceremony at my sacred tree. I brought the heart stone that had shattered out in August of whatever year that was. And I brought the remainder of the stone for this ceremony at the winter solstice. And when I set the remainder of the stone next to the heart stone that had already shattered out of it, suddenly it shattered a second time.
Oh my God. Wow.
Just spontaneous, just as I set it down, it just shatters a second time, and it reveals a matching twin stone that was the same size and weight as a second human heart that shattered. Both of these heart stones shattered out of this human serpentine Kundalini stone. And Kathy and I were pretty astonished and really understood that this meant that at some point in our future, the human brittle ego would be shattering off of us, and we would be liberated into our hearts. And I think that shattering might be happening now.
Yes,
Kathy,
the energy's here, yes.
Kathy,
Yeah,
do you have
actually,
any comments you want to add to this story, Kathy, if you're there?
well, if my memory serves me correctly, one of the things that I remember about it, and of course my memory's not so good anymore, but is that, you know, it shattered, but it was very gentle. It was almost like, you know, when you get layers of limestone or shale and they separate. And that's kind of my remembrance of it, is that they were shed in sort of in layers like that to reveal the second one, the two hearts. And so I thought that was so symbolic of how we as humans need to shed the layers of, you know, our separation, our ego, you know, our blindness, and become one again with everything, but even one with ourselves, you know, instead of being separated, mental, emotion, and physical, masculine and feminine, this reunification of all aspects of ourselves, as well as our reunification with the planet and all the beings.
Wow, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I think that the shattering can sound pretty scary or violent, but you're right, it was more of a shedding, which makes sense that, you know, the serpents shed their skin.
A birthing.
Mhm.
It was a revealing. It was a beautiful revealing.
You have a question, Victoria, from really interesting question from John that says, what would happen if everybody got on the same frequency? Is it possible?
I think that probably is where we're headed if we allow it, if we choose it. I think we have to feed that possibility, you know, by choosing
Right.
to relate essence to essence, to listen to creation, to listen to one another, to drop some of the just drop the disconnection as much as we can, even though sometimes we feel we need it for protection. But I think that's where we're headed. Thank you for that beautiful question. Somebody's had their hand raised. Elke, is that your name?
Yeah, she's not on the screen. There she is. Yeah, go ahead, Elke.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, Victoria, thank you so much. And I call from the Treaty 6 territory and the homeland of the Métis up in Canada. And I am also very grateful to be building my home here. And I am originally from the Germanic people. And I traced my roots all the way back because, you know, Germanic and Norse and probably Vikings as well. So, you know, we all come from somewhere, right? But I wanted to comment on your voice. I don't know if you've ever heard of Tom Kenyon. Yeah, and when Tom Kenyon sings, there's these vibrations and the frequencies in his voice, and your voice reminded me of that. It has like a really strong activating tone, you know, and the way you shift up and down. I'm really sensitive to frequencies. And it was very, very interesting, and how you used your voice to, you know, strengthen sometimes and to pull back. And I really, really, really felt it. And it was wonderful. And, you know, sound healing and frequency is a mathematical field in its own. I mean, it is very well known that it has an effect. So, you know, I think you just have what you need to have to do what you need to do.
My goodness, thank you. Well, thank you for that. I didn't have any awareness of that. And, you know, I think each of us is carrying a unique puzzle piece. And mine has to do with the voice, which really surprises me in a way, you know, because I'm not a singer or a songwriter or anything, but that's how this is coming through. So I have to trust it. And I trust that each and every single person is likewise carrying a very unique puzzle piece that's needed for the kaleidoscope of the wholeness that we're returning to, and that we each sort of are carrying this destiny to be a whole person, to contribute to a whole planet, where all the voices are needed, or all the expressions, even if it's not voice, all the expressions are needed.
Yeah, Rick, go ahead, please.
Yeah, one of the things that I have learned in all of my astrological healing work, as I analyze different planets and charts of the voice is an integral part of healing, the same way we see in spiritual healing that the outer auric fields of the mental, spiritual, and emotional are affected before the body is. We can affect that change in the body as we voice things.
Mm.
And it's very important for such a time as this, because we are seeing things that are shattering toxic masculinity, even in women, because we have the Karens that everybody recognizes in that toxic manifestation of a jammed up masculinity that isn't being integrated in the same way. It's not flowing in its sacredness, and that's where we have to move, as Rick has said, with flow.
Well, what's interesting, Rick, is I'm sitting here after 306 shows, and I can tell something's different. And I'm going to use the word milestone. I'm not sure what it is, but Victoria, you caused all this trouble. But I think it's going to be the start of something. I don't know what's going to happen, but things have changed. Things have changed. They were changing, but now they've changed, and you have been the catalyst, which is greatly appreciated. So I went back to 804 tonight and did a chart for 804 tonight. Let's do a chart. This is an astrology show. What does the chart say? It said it was born at 804. And I will show you what I came up with. It was really intriguing. I want to make sure you all see this. Some are better with astrology than others. But what do you see sticking out right away? What sticks out right away? Venus, Neptune, 24, 25. This is so strong, you don't even need to look at the rest of the chart. This is so strong. Venus, Neptune, is literal translation is joining together from our individual hearts into one heart.
Mm.
And it's major placement right there.
Mm.
So as Rick does some intriguing styles of astrology, I'll save this chart. This chart speaks for us as a moment of shift. I don't know whether there'll be more shows, but we've been holding pretty steady for a long time with about 9 people. Then we go to YouTube with about 150 more, but something's happened today. And I certainly want to invite you back. We'll talk about it. I think there's many places for you to come and talk and open up another branch of topics, whatever, I don't know. But I definitely felt for a while that just talking astrologically was running out of time. We can only do so much at that level. It still has its place, but you've opened it up tonight to such a very natural expanding, nothing forced, not your agenda, just a very natural, I know you're a Cancer, a very natural, organic way of opening us up like a flower. And I think it's really, really good. And the crowd has doubled in size. I would like to please invite you back later on, whenever it's a good time for us. To remind everybody else, next week will be the replay of the one I just did in Melbourne, Australia, which is a 90-minute show on how the harmonics are done. And that was a lot of fun with Ksenia Moore. That'll be played next week. And then March 9th will be the show with my friend Clarissa Berkman out of California. And we're going to be talking about the myths of the New Age movement, which is a lot of talk about how we don't have to do it anymore. And let's start doing it this way. Let's take the strain out of it. Right, Sigmund? Let's take the strain out of it. Let's bring the ease into it. So again, we're seeing another shift is happening here. So I don't know what's going on. All I could tell you is for months I kept telling you that the ground was shaking. Well, it done shook. So anybody that's got a final question for Victoria, who's just been wonderful. She said, Elke says, lovely to meet you. Victoria, I'm sure we all feel the same. Everybody, thank you so much. Victoria, thank you so much for being with us and bringing your posse with you. Judy, do it again.
Joy.
Do it again next time. Great to see everybody. Tell your friends on Facebook. Tell your friends that that we got into a category that they might like, and they can always find the link, etc. We're going to do more of this stuff. You can write to me if you need connections to various people by writing to rick@starself.com. It's like myself, only it's star self, rick@starself.com. So thank you, everybody, once again. And we're doing even better. Well, we got 4 men. Woo! That's pretty good. Used to be 1 or 2. Thank you. This is all you're doing, Victoria. Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody, for
This will be on YouTube tonight. You want to find it. Good night, everybody.
Thank you, Vicki. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you. Good night.